In the theme of commanders, we're going to be moving to multicolored, and first up is Anzrag, the Quake Mole. Anzrag is a mole god, and that he actually is. He is a 4-mana 8/4 that says whenever he becomes blocked, you untap each creature you control, and after this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. And then you could pay 7 mana to make him so that he has to be blocked each combat if able. Not this combat if able, each combat. So, what this will look like, at least in my theory crafting world, is you get Anzrag out, you activate him, and you swing until the table is completely devoid of creatures. Ideally, you'd want to give him trample. You might be able to kill the board that way, depending on how many creatures your opponents control. As of right now, however, there is only one way to give both trample and indestructible, and that is with Gaia's Gift, where suddenly your 8/4 is going to attack everybody who has a creature over and over again until that creature is dead, without actually losing your commander. I don't know, what do you think? In our world of Gruul decks, this is going to be competing with Itali, Daryl.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would go for such a strategy. I think it's too dependent on something that doesn't quite win you the game. And what I mean, if you are actually building your deck with ways to abuse his ability and or giving it destructible or trample or whatever, I think it's a fragile way to go for, and I think you're better off with the Tali or even the 6/6 that deals 6 damage for each non-creature spellcast.
Rukthar. Yeah.
Rukthar. Actually, I don't know why people stopped playing that. I guess we're a lot into a creature-based strategy these days, meta, but yeah, I wouldn't try these, but I wouldn't be surprised if these kind of decks start appearing in top 16s because people just undervalue or under pressure this kind of deck, and they just do what they need to do, and they are the last man standing at the table, and they get to top 16s. But
it's called Brewer's Advantage. That's why we're here. Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit more highly of this, just because it can provide so much pressure just from itself alone. It doesn't require any other cards. Again, if you can somehow give him trample, somehow give him indestructible, if there's someone that is just slightly a little bit more on the creature heavy side of things, they're going to get swung out and lose their entire board to this creature. And if it has trample, they probably die. I agree with you, where, like, okay, if someone is asking me for a Gruul list, I'm going to give them Atali, 100%. Atali and any of the combo lists behind it, or even the more stormy lists like Ian recently featured on his YouTube video, they're probably going to be better in the long run. But if you wanted something that was more combat themed, I would have to either hand you Anzrag or Rukthar. And I think for the sake of wanting a little bit of diversity in that sphere, not that there's anybody actually playing. Okay, no offense to people who still play Rukthar. I haven't seen you in a long time. I hope you're still okay, and I hope you're still playing cEDH. But in case you wanted to come back and try something different, you could try Anzrag. Then moving on, we have Insidious Roots. It's a deck we both love.
It's a deck we both love. Basically, it's a Tayam card, black and a green, an enchantment that reads: creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Whenever one or more creature cards leaves your graveyard, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. Then put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. Not just that one, all your plants that you already control will get a +1/+1 counter. The first line is a Cryptolith Rights that only for creature tokens. When you're looping Tayam, bringing creatures from your graveyard into play, you're creating more plants and putting +1/+1 counters on all of the plants that you can then use alongside Tayam to remove the counters, to add mana. So basically, I don't think it's like a card that goes infinite, but it's a really good card that helps you on these synergies, especially if you're already on the 1000-year elixir in play, or the new commander that allows your creatures to tap without having haste. Tyvar, I believe. It will allow all your new plants to tap for mana. So I suppose there might be a line actually where you go infinite with this, but I don't know it yet.
Yeah, I'm personally not able to make these lines when I look at this. I can just say that Tayam's already playing 1,000 Year Elixir and Tyvar, so obviously anything that gives creature tokens the ability to tap for mana is going to be good. Not only will this be creating creature tokens, but they also play, what is it, Boon of... some type of white boon card that creates 4 1/1 soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
And they're also playing Scurry Oak to create scroll tokens. So anyway, creature tokens are a part of it. Having those creature tokens tap for mana is going to be relevant because they're going to end up getting sacrificed later, so they pay for Tayam activations. And then every single time you do pick a creature card from your graveyard to come back, you're going to make more creature tokens that tap for mana, and then you'll get to put +1/+1 counters on your plants. So anything that is regularly going to create more mana from doing stuff with Tayam, and then more counters from doing stuff with Tayam, it's going to be tested in the lists. If we're wrong, Tayam pilots of the world, let us know in the comments, and we'll give you a heart.
Yep.
We'll give you a heart next to your comment. We'll like your comments.
Exactly. I did took a quick peek on the cEDH database list of Tayams. There was 3 there at the moment, and none had the Insidious roots, but maybe they are still testing it. Yeah, come and give us some feedback on the comments below.
We could just be wrong. It could just be not good enough, because that could just be it. It could just be not good enough. But that's fine. You know, that's just how life is. Moving on, we have Melik, Reforged Researcher. Once again, Melik was played in a recent video of ours that you can check out here. I'm finally pointing in the right directions. But Melik is a 5-mana commander whose power and toughness is unknown, as it's situational. Melik Reforged Researcher's power and toughness are equal to the number of twice the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. And then the first instant or sorcery card you cast each turn costs 3 less to cast. So, if I remember correctly from the way that David built this list, was not only to have a really big graveyard so that Melik would be huge, but then to use Melik's power and toughness as a sort of game closer. I recall Chandra's Ignition was actually in the list as a way that it would only cost 2 red mana and potentially wipe the board. Not only wipe the board, but wipe out your opponents if there was enough in your graveyard. You would only need maybe 20 or so instants and sorceries in this heavy control list to pull that off. Do you recall any other sort of features that this deck was built around?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think he was on extra turns. Well, and let's just correct these for the sake of correctiveness. That's a thing. It was not his list, and I was just pulling this out to give the proper credits to the brewer, who was Alok888, getting a big Melik in order to fling it somehow, attack for lethal, because sometimes you could attack a player for lethal commander damage and then maybe fling it to another opponent and then, well, be 1v1 with maybe the least threatening opponent at the table. Yeah, actually he wasn't on extra turns. Some extra combats like Seize the Day apparently, and a lot of value, because actually reducing the cost of each the first instant or sorcery spell could be a 1-mana Seize the Day, for instance. And he was on he was on mostly fling effects, but I think if I were to build this deck, I would try extra turns and as an option, and maybe breach, extra turns into breach, something like that.
Yeah, I'd probably see extra turns into breach. Maybe some of the more higher costed spells that we don't get to see a lot of anymore. I don't know if I would just play some of the like 1-mana draw spells, like the 1 mana X, draw X cards. So there was obviously a lot of ways that you could take this list. At the end of the day, for me, with all the available Izzet options, I probably wouldn't play this list personally, but it definitely has its own unique take on things, where you're an Izzet list that can actually pressure life totals and just sit around with a really huge commander. And because of that, you have extra cards and new strategies you get to play along with it. So I can see it.
So moving on to the next one, which is Commander Mustard. It's a legendary creature, and we were talking about it in the command zone. It does cost 3, a red and a white. It's a Boros commander, human soldier with vigilance, and a line of text that reads, other soldiers you control have vigilance, trample, and haste. And the line we're mostly here to talk about, it's an activated ability which costs 2, a red and a white. Until end of turn, soldiers you control gain whenever this creature attacks. It deals 1 damage to defending player. So basically, this is an infinite mana outlet in the command zone for Boros, and you could, as long as you have 2 soldiers, extra soldiers, because you do infinite mana, other soldiers, let's say 3, because if you are casting your commander, himself does not have haste, the only 2 other ones. Basically, you can infinitely activate him, and the 3 soldiers you would have available to attack would gain the ability infinitely, and once they are just simply declared as attackers, all of those different infinite instances of that same ability would go on the stack, trigger, and hopefully kill your opponents, just not even needing to connect. And well, in Boros you have some good ways to do infinite mana through Dockside and Balsam Curio, or the enchantment. What was the name?
Something excavation. Meticulous excavation is the
Dockside and meticulous excavation, for instance, or same old Bomberman, LED, and Auriok Salvagers. Hopefully you have a Grand Abolisher and no opponent to bounce it with an Ottawa, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I think before people call us crazy about the situation of needing soldiers in order for this to go off, really quickly, Esper Sentinel, soldier, Ranger Captain of Eos, soldier, Thalia, Cathar Commando, Recruiter of the Guard, Boromir, playable. Boromir's a soldier. Myrel, list goes on. There are playable soldiers. I promise we're not crazy, and we're not just saying go play casual cards in order to make this work.
Exactly.
Another thing to note is, even if you can only kill 1 person, you might still be winning the game. There is no guarantee that just because you kill 1 person and pass, you'll lose. This is up to you as a pilot. I like this. I like this kind of stuff where you have the ability to kill 1 person and you want to also make sure you don't lose to the other 2 people. It should be possible. You should be able to sit there and say, all right, it's blue farm. Guess what? Blue farm, you're useless. But maybe there's somebody else who has, fallen a little bit behind, and you know that they won't be able to recover in the extra turn that you give them. Let them live. Kill them next turn. So I like it. I'm willing to enjoy any commander that is an infinite mana outlet and gives a little bit of a unique swing on things. Outside of being an outlet, is he super useful? Not particularly. Would I cast him normally? If I was leaning into a Staxier thing, yes. We said we weren't going to talk about any other, just win conless stacks commanders today. If he was leaning towards a little bit more of a Staxier plan, sure, I maybe cast him. He has a 5/5 with vigilance who gives your other soldiers vigilance, trample, and haste, and that's huge. On the bright side, he can do great things with extra combat steps. You can kill the table if you're willing to take extra combat steps or extra turns. So Final Fortune in this list counts as another soldier. You only need 2 soldiers and 1 Final Fortune, and you're good to go. So give it a shot if you like this kind of list. At the end of the day, why do you play this over Winota? Is because you like combos more than the reliance on Winota, or maybe you just don't want to lose to Grafdigger's Cage. I don't think this is better than Winota. Definitely not. But I think it's an option. So.
Yep.
Alrighty. Moving right down the list, we have a fun one, Niv Mizzet Guild Pact. I get to brag about Baal just doing a great job with this list in the last in our last video. I was terrified of your list. I know that you had to use your damage in order to take out tutors from Elder during that game, but if it had come anywhere near my board, I was screwed. Like if Thrasios was not there, I was going to be out of the game. So I felt a lot of pressure from this. Niv Mizzet is a 5-drop commander. It costs 1 of each color. It is a 6/6 with flying and hexproof and multicolored, so it's really difficult to well, cEDH I wouldn't say has a lot of multicolor removal, but if it did come up, you wouldn't be able to Assassin's Trophy Niv Mizzet. But its cool thing is its ability. Whenever Niv Mizzet Guild Pact deals combat damage to a player, it deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards, you gain X life, where X is the number of different color pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colors. It turns out in cEDH, there are a lot of really good cards that are 2 colors. We have Talion, we have Kinnan. What else we got?
Well, Deathrite Shaman, and just only costing 1.
Yep, Deathrite Shaman is great.
I did like to brew up this build, and going through it, found that you can actually play a lot of cards that are actually not seeing that much play in some other 5-color decks, just because you have maybe something better, but they ended up being strictly better for this one. For instance, I would want a Grand Abolisher because it costs 2, but here I went for Kutsil because it would give me another color pair. Fabro Elder is definitely amazing, while in that video, if you go and watch it, I wanted to tutor with Vampiric Tutor for Bloom Tender because it would allow me to ramp quite easily. Fabro is actually better because it's already it's another color pair. You have Mayhem Devil, where you can actually get some good synergies with the dog side. Vexing Searcher doesn't see so much play, but with the Bloom Apprentice is also another option to get off of it. Zerda, Usury, Fortune's Flame actually saw a top 16 in Spain this last weekend or last week, and I think it's actually a decent commander and a decent card if you want to take it onto it. Lotho, Lavinia, Captain Caesar is also quite good to get the hang of all of these creatures, because most of these 2-color creatures tend to be legendary, so you can check out the list. And I think it's a decent commander to build around, and the idea is just you try to cast it earlier through a Bloom Tender that is taking advantage of other 2-pair cards you played earlier, and you have your 6/6 flying that is drawing you 2, 3, 4 cards per turn, and basically also policing the board with the damage that you're dealing. So I think you can perhaps find it picking up another top 16 here or there that people just don't recognize the mid-range potential that it has. But you definitely have better cards in 5 colors to go for it, but I think it's decent.
If you want to be original, go play Kenrith. Go ahead. If you're worried about value stuff, go ahead. Be quote unquote original and play Kenrith like everybody else. I like it a lot into the mid range, quite a bit. And like I said, when I was playing against it, I was terrified of where this would go and what it would do, because it was a lot of card draw. I think before the game ended, your last Niv Mizzet trigger was 4 or 5, which is more than what, which is more than what obviously Timna would have made in any of those scenarios. So just knowing that I'm suddenly staring down the barrel of a 5-color deck that has a ton of lands, and then it's drew 5 cards. It's tough. It's a scary thing to be a part of. So
and playing this deck, just as I mentioned, you do want to rush your Fabro or Bloom Tender, because once you hit and you draw these 3-4 cards, one of your dorks just tapping out for Warbook is like amazing. You can output a lot of those drawn cards. It's not like you're drawing and then you don't have so much mana. You just need to have those dorks around and hopefully tap for the 5 colors. Okay, and next up we have Duskana Rage Mother. It's another legendary creature, so we're talking about it in the command zone. It's a bear, a Naya colors, 2 colorless and Naya, so 5 mana value, and it reads, when Duskana Rage Mother enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with base, power, and toughness 2/2. So if you happen to have a cut this, it's a 2/2. Whenever a creature you control with base, power, and toughness 2/2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn, and it is a 5/5. We had in the same video that maybe you've just seen around here floating in the last card, we had Elder from our channel as well playing Duskana, the Rage Mother, a deck focused a little bit around 8 bears, I suppose, like Collector Oof, and you have other you have actually a decent amount of 2/2 creatures in cEDH that could give you extra drawn cards once you cast it, and then use them to attack for lethal. I think like Archivist of Ogma was drawing him some cards. It's a 2/2. Do you remember some other good appliances?
Archivist of Ogma, I think, was the only 2/2 that we saw. But that was really all he needed. He had access to creature tutors. He was playing Imperial Recruiter and Recruiter of the Guard.
He found Delnates, and it was another one, which would then also trigger these.
But yeah, he really only needed the 1/2/2 in order to go off. We saw him try to present a Cloudstone Curio line with Dockside, and then Duskana would allow him to draw his library, but we knew that he was on Food Chain as well for the main strategy here. I think that's about it for Duskana. Coming up to the last commander we're going to talk about today is Voja. Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. Voja is a 5-drop 5/5 with Vigilance, Trample, and hey, there's that word again, Ward 3. Good luck. Whenever Voja, Jaws of the Conclave attacks, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, and then draw a card for each wolf you control. So right away, 2 things that came to mind is that cEDH has a lot of elves. And if you wanted to build this as a stacks your hate bear deck that just keeps pumping your board every time your commander attacks, you could. However, the line about drawing a card for each wolf you control does not disqualify this deck at all. There are 2 key cards that I want to bring up. The first one is Maskwood Nexus. Maskwood Nexus allows you to basically give every single creature type to all creatures you control, which means every time Voja attacks, you will draw X cards and put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of creatures you control. To put this into perspective, it'll be something like you turn 1 a mana dork, you turn 2 some kind of value creature, let's just say Drannith Magistrate, and let's say turn 3, what do you want to throw out here? A Dockside Extortionist, a Feyburrow Elder. Anyway, turn 4, Voja enters the battlefield, you get to swing with him, and you'll draw 4 cards, and each creature you control gets +4/+4. Permanently. Which is pretty good. That's enough to begin to really pressure your opponent's life totals. And that's just with Maskwood Nexus. So the last card we'd like to talk about is Mirror Entity. Same thing. Activating Mirror Entity gives all of your creatures all creature types, but then also lets you set their base power and toughness. So I would almost say that Mirror Entity could serve as a bit of a game closer, where you can sink all of your mana into Mirror Entity, pump your entire board. They get massive. Voja makes them even bigger. And then you'll draw a bajillion cards. When it comes to the 2 Naya commanders we talked today, being Voja for one and then Duskana for the other, I think I like Voja more. I know Voja doesn't have the power of being an outlet as easily as Duskana is, where Duskana just wins with Food Chain and the Cloudstone Dockside loops. Despite that, I think I enjoy the more guaranteed card draw that that Voja can have compared to Descana. Do you have any opinion one way or the other?
Between the two, I also prefer Voja. It's also a wolf, so it's already at least drawing 1. The Ward 3, as we know from Tivid, it's kind of can't touch this. I don't want to say the best, but I would say I will definitely not say the best, but I would say it's one of the best Naya win condos commanders because it's actually more proactively increasing your board presence with those +1/+1 counters with War 3. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, yeah, and not to mention, every single time Voja attacks, this board gets harder to interact with. And I mean that in terms of life thresholds for things, such as Toxic Deluge and
Fire Covenant.
And Fire Covenant. Every single time Voja attacks, it gets harder and harder to meet that range. Where Voja, especially if I'm the one piloting this list, I'm going to target the person who has the ability to cast those kind of spells and pay life for it. Odds are, if you're getting hit by my Trample, Vigilance, 8/8 maybe, by the time Voja attacks, it gets a lot less tantalizing to try to do that on your next turn. And have to pay 8 life, just to get rid of Voja here. So, I'm a big fan of it. I think... Oh, here's a question. Do you play Roaming Throne in this list?
Maybe. Yeah, it also doubles the triggers, right?
So, Roaming Throne would enter the battlefield. You would name Wolf, so Roaming Throne becomes a wolf that has Ward 2, and then it'll double the triggered abilities of all wolves, which is Voja. Yep. So Voja draws 4 cards then every time it attacks because you control 2 wolves and the trigger is doubled, and then it puts however many elves you controlled to get up to that point. I've been looking for a Naya list because I don't have one yet. I kind of like this. If I had to pick between Descana or Voja, I think I'll go with Voja for my Naya pick. This might actually be a deck that I build and start playing myself. We have arrived at our final card of this set review. It's more of a cycle. We're going to talk about the new cycle of dual lands. These dual lands do enter the battlefield tapped, but they are typed, so they can be gotten with your fetches. Big difference between them and the past ones that have been printed is that when they enter the battlefield, you can surveil 1. Right away, the application that the Rakdos server has been discussing when it comes to these is that if you are doing a World Gorger Dragon loop and do not have a creature in the graveyard to stop the loop, these new dual lands will be able to surveil your library into the graveyard until you get a creature to stop the loop and go for the win. Did you think of any other applications outside of that?
I think these ones could see play in 2-color decks where you actually kind of want another duel. Maybe you want Tainted Pact mana base, and you're maybe avoiding fetches because of opposition agents or even mind sensors in your local meta, or maybe you actually need the color fixing more than basics and snow lands. And I think on lists that will care about their graveyards, I could see a 2-color list, maybe EZET or blue-black, that will hold up a fetch for interaction. If nothing happens during that turn cycle, maybe they just crack it for that tapped land and they happen to surveil something into their graveyard or see what's coming. At most, on something like if you're in a list with High Tide, like the Vadrock list used to be, and you do care about the number of islands you're running, then perhaps you could get along onto the blue ones for more islands or island count for the High Tide, basically.
Yeah, I could see that. Again, maybe nothing beyond 2-color. For budget decks? Sure. Well, actually, no. Budget decks can't play these. These things are like $10 a pop because they're type duels that surveil, right?
Yep.
So sadly for our budget-friendly friends, these really are not an option for you either. Just looking at the Rakdos one, it is currently $4. Okay, so maybe some of them might land within certain budget restrictions. But if you're on budget, you're probably not playing fetch lands anyway. So
yep.
Take that as you will. Alrighty, that reaches the end of our set review for both Karlov Manor, Karlov Manor Commander, and the attached Clue kind of side set that came out at the same time. If you'd be looking to pick up these cards, I think the Clue set isn't technically available for release yet, and orders are still on pre-order. But despite how much people are complaining about this being an underpowered set, I feel like there was actually a lot of playable stuff that came out of here. Nothing format warping per se, but I think overall there's enough for people to try to test something, pick up a new deck, add something new to their list. That's really what I look for when it comes to a new cEDH set. So honestly, not too bad.
Yep. If you find any other cards that you think are playable in any list that maybe we just don't know or we missed, leave a comment below. We will gladly look into more ideas. We don't know all the lists that exist, all the strategies, and we will look forward for your comments. And you can also take a look at our other gameplay videos in the channel where some of these cards were already showcased.
How do we want to close these out?